All right, everybody, we are back, and today we're going to get into the big movements, the revolutions of 1848. And it's getting pretty tense in Europe. And this just gives you an idea. So we talked about 1830, we talked about some of the things going on, and then 1848, it's going to get much more widespread, okay? Trying to get some stuff done. And let's go with France, the big one. All right, what were the current concerns in France? Well, there was a massive depression that hit in 1846, okay? One-third of all workers in Paris were unemployed. There was massive corruption and bribery, high food prices, and of course, the lack of voting rights. And here are some actually political cartoons from the time, all depicting Louis-Philippe, just like throwing money at people because they have so much money and it doesn't matter. And then these people all just feeding their bread into the gut of Louis Napoleon. What comes out are just a bunch of like laws that aren't good or helpful or anything like that. So things aren't good. So Louis Philippe is basically wearing out his welcome here. And so the resistance, again, led by Adolphe Thiers, or Thiers, I keep saying it wrong, I should figure that out. Now, so initially what happens is Thiers now adopts a new, so it's not party of the resistance, rather they are radical Republicans, and they are speaking out and calling for the dismissal of the party of resistance and to ouster Guizot, and we need to change it. And unfortunately what ends up happening is that protests are deemed to be illegal. So what they do instead, as is what you see in the picture of lots of wonderful French cheeses and grapes to the right, is that they start holding banquets. And from 1847 to 1870, over 70 banquets are held to criticize the government. Okay, and so that's what they're trying to do, and to get greater sentiment against Louis-Philippe. And in February of 1848, the change is going to hit. Okay, there will be a final banquet in February of 1848, and the federal government comes in and like bans it and immediately tries to arrest people. And the result of that is rioting. You see this here. This is in Paris and all over France. There's rioting in the streets, calling for change. And shockingly enough, after, some people are going to die, don't get me wrong, Louis-Philippe is going to abdicate. So Charles X abdicates, Louis abdicates, and now we've got a provisional government, okay? And there's a variety. This is actually some of the main guys involved. Okay, there's Adolphe there, and Louis Blanc, who we talked about, who I believe is right here, gets involved. So basically, a provisional government is established, and it really is just a committee of guys, again, all wearing suits and pants, to stabilize the government and try to come up with a new way to rule, okay? And the goal is to create a new constitution and a legislature, and eventually that would be created by universal male suffrage. And to go along with that is they're actually going to set up national workshops that Blanc had advocated before, which I talked about in my liberalism, or my isms video, if you will. It's going to focus on unskilled labors like ditch diggers and leaf cleaning, and trying to get more people some initial jobs. And then again, if they have jobs, they can put money into the economy, and it could work out. That's the overall goal. Unfortunately, there are going to be some problems. The moderate and radical Republicans that were made up of this committee, they just couldn't agree on everything. The radical Republican wanted to get rid of the monarchy, and they wanted to have government more similar to the United States, but most people were more leaning toward moderate changes. And then you got to divide, and we've talked about this a lot in France before, of like what Paris wanted. In Paris, the more people Paris were radical, but the people outside Paris who really weren't into Paris, they were more moderate, and they just couldn't get it done, okay? Now, they do end up having an election, which is good, and it's a total of 900 seats would make up the government, okay? The moderate Republicans won 500. Monarchists who actually wanted to bring the monarchy back, they won 300 seats, and the radicals only had about 100. So it looks like we're going to try to get some moderate fix here. Now, Unfortunately, the plan with the workshops under Louis Blanc ends up not working actually very well. Now, the good part is that the workshop employment went from 10,000 people to 120,000 people, but the problem was is the government really didn't have the revenue to run it anymore, and so in June of 1848, a couple months after the revolution, which I believe was in February, they closed the shops. Well, this results in massive riots that take place over 4 days. Thousands of people are killed, and 4,000 people actually get banished to Algeria, which was a colony of these guys at the time. So it's all sorts of crazy. And in the end, they do get a new French Republic, okay? And so what you're going to have is a one-house legislature. 750 members are elected for 3 years. A president is then the executive who serves for 4 years. And we do have universal male suffrage. And it seems like this is kind of successful, although they don't do much to help the economy. But the guy that ends up getting elected, oddly enough, if you look on the right there, wearing still other pants, would be Charles Louis Napoleon, who is actually Napoleon's nephew. And a lot of people were worried because he had been kind of a pro-monarchy guy. And in the end, this does end up being a failure because in 4 years, he's going to overthrow the government. And I don't even know what's happening in France anymore. So we're just going to move on. And we're going to get to the Germanic states. All right, we've talked about this. And so let's get into Prussia. Okay, so Prussia sees the revolutions in France, and they're going to make some concessions to ward off mass revolution. And this is under King Frederick IV. Okay, here's his actual picture, and that's again, the decoration. We got some robes, but pants. So he's going to make some quick moves, okay? He's going to abolish government censorship. Cool. He's going to establish a new constitution. Cool. And he's going to promise to work to unite all of Germany into one country. Cool. However, you still don't really have, there's no voting and there's no government change, and that's not going to happen. So I guess some good things. The Germanic Confederation, on the other hand, and you see a map of all the different, Brunswick and Westphalia and Hesse and the Palatinate and Württemberg and Baden and all sorts of places. So they are looking to try to become an actual nation, okay? They are going to adopt universal male suffrage for most of the provinces. They are going to create their own little parliaments. And eventually they decide that they're going to try to come together to turn this Germanic Confederation into an actual country. And they're going to do it through something known as the Frankfurt Assembly. So who is this? Well, basically this is middle-class people, well-educated. They're professors, they're lawyers, they're bureaucrats. And the goal of the Frankfurt Assembly was to come together to create a Germany. See, look, we have a flag that's Germany, and it's all wonderful. But unfortunately, you have party divisions, okay? You have the Großdeutsch, which means big Germany, and the Kleindeutsch, which means small or little Germany. The Großdeutsch wanted to unite and then conquer Austria in order to become a country. So they're a little bit more aggressive. The Kleindeutsch, little Germany, wanted to instead just consolidate German lands and make the Emperor of Prussia king of the German state. So it seems like this could be a good idea. And they argue and they go back and forth. And then finally in 1849, so it starts in 1848, they come together in 1849, and they're going to offer King Frederick IV the throne of Germany. We're going to unite. And then King Frederick IV says no. And the whole thing disbands. And so there's nothing. So it's not a violent thing, but nonetheless, it doesn't necessarily work. So, sorry. Austria, here we go. Now, let's look at Austria. Austria, okay, is they're a large empire, but again, we have all those different ethnic groups. Germans and Hungarians and Italians, Romanians, Poles, Czechs, Ukrainians, Serbs and Croats, Slovaks and Slovenes and Magyars. It's crazy. So, in 1848, there begins to have a liberal revolution in Hungary led by Louis Kossuth. Now, the general goal of this group here under Louis Kossuth is to allow the Habsburg Emperor to still be in charge, right? But they wanted their own legislature and self-rule. They wanted to become a commonwealth under the Austrian Empire. And of course, the reason for that is the Hungarians are, if we pop back, I mean, Hungarians, again, the pink, huge amount of people, and not only geographically, but ethnically, they do make up the largest ethnic group that aren't Austrians, okay? And so they want to create a commonwealth, and what ends up happening is in 1848, they have uprisings, Hungarian uprisings, and this is kind of like a victory parade because there will be some victory, okay? So we've got all the Hungarians and they're marching, and yay! And so they have an uprising in Vienna, and in response to that, under Ferdinand I in Austria, there are going to be some changes, okay? And so I'm going to just show you a map here. Basically, what we're going to end up in the creation of the nation of Austria-Hungary, as seen by the map on the right. Okay, so after that revolution in Vienna, what you get is Hungary will get its own legislature, a separate national army. They will control their foreign policy. They do have to pledge allegiance to the Habsburg emperors. Okay, Louis Kossuth is going to lead them. And at this point, Austria now becomes Austria-Hungary. But groups like the Czechs and the Poles and others are like, well, this could work. And so Ferdinand I comes in. That's him on the left there. Yes, I know you're going to say something about his head. Leave him alone. He's just a regular guy. Well, he's an emperor, but still, he's a person. Be nice with medals. So he is going to come in, and initially he's going to go along with the whole Hungary thing, and what he does on the slide, though, is he really starts putting massive amounts of money into the Austrian military. Okay, and it's also going to help him that he has a General Alfred Windischgratz, who is going to be one of the best of the era. And so what they're going to do in 1848 is they're going to increase the army and get themselves ready. So they're going to let the Hungarians be, but nothing else is going to fly. Okay, in late 1848, the Czechs revolt for their own country. As you see here, this is the Czech uprising, and they are going to just be destroyed and beaten down in the city of Prague. A mob will rise up in Vienna and actually kill a minister of war, which is not good. So all resistance to the monarchy there is crushed, okay? And it's just not working for people. Although Ferdinand kind of gets tired of this, and in 1849 he is going to abdicate for his nephew, Francis Joseph I. That's a picture of him when he's older. Okay, so Francis Joseph I decides that he's going to try to then take back Hungary, and he is going to actually invade Hungary, although he is going to lose, but then the policy of intervention comes in, and because they don't want the Hungarians forming some type of republic, so Russia comes in and crushes the Hungarians, which they'll do again in a couple different times, and the Hungarians are forced to now pledge full allegiance to the Austrian Emperor, and even though they get some home rule, they aren't as independent as they initially were given that independence in 1848. Now, they are still going to be referred to as Austria-Hungary, but the Austrians are still ruling the show, and we are back to an autocracy. There is no legislature, none of that. Italy, all right, they're going to give it a stab, and something that is known as the Risorgimento, or the Resurgence, which is led by a man by the name of Giuseppe Mazzini, okay, and he creates an organization known as Young Italy, and they are going to create an Italian republic, not an Italian empire, not a kingdom. They want to create a republic, and their goal is to get rid of the Austrians and the French, and it's all about nationalism, okay, and all about being Italians, because the Italians really had never had a full-blown country, okay? They had all those city-states forever. And what Mazzini's going to do a very good job at getting the nobility to come help him. And that's crucial because, if you're going to have a revolution, you need all the classes to come together. And that is really going to be emblematic or emblemized, I don't know. But the woman that really leads the show for that is a woman who's a wealthy noble by the name of Cristina Belgioso, who is there to help give money and spur on resistance. Unfortunately, she gets death threats from the Austrians and is forced to actually go into hiding. Now, in early 1848, they initially are going to have some success. They start by rebelling in Sicily, okay, and so the Sicilian Revolution's over here. And then the provinces of Venetia and Lombardy are going to revolt against the Austrians, okay, and then they actually get a leader. Now, remember this, the state of Piedmont, which is in northwest Italy, and they also control the island of Sardinia, led by King Charles Albert. They are going to come back a bunch. Piedmont had a ton of people. They have an organized army, and they are going to actually assume the mantle and go to war directly with the Austrians. And in some shape or form, all of these 9 provinces will rise up. But unfortunately, they're going to fail. Charles Albert is defeated by the Austrians in Lombardy. Austria will also retake Venetia. And then the Pope Pius IX, decides to cut a deal with the French, okay, and local rulers to regain control of Rome and the Papal States. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is a lot of the revolution fails from within. And so yet another failure. And so why does nothing seem to work? Well, it's 2 issues of unity and nationalism. So with unity, revolutionaries can never really rally behind one leader. I don't have one leader. I don't have one strong group here. And a lot of times, even if they had an early victory like they did in France, they tended to fracture. And when they fracture, very quickly autocrats and other nations that were stronger, like a Russia or parts of France, are able to come down and basically drop the hammer. And a lot of times, people who had the upper classes, people who were well off, didn't want to risk their livelihood, and you just couldn't get people to buy into things. Nationality-wise, national rebellions also had issues because sometimes those rebelling were all about themselves, but in, say, the case of Austria-Hungary. So the Hungarians were all about themselves rebelling, but really didn't care about the Czechs or the Slovaks or anything like that. And in many cases, they were just as oppressive to those other groups as well. And so the Hungarians might rise up, but nobody else would help them, or in fact, they might go against them. And so even though there are national groups, they just don't quite have it yet. Now, we're going to have success later on, but in 1848, in the end, guys, sadly, most of them failed. All right, let's make sure we get our notes on this stuff, and I'll see you guys soon.